The lights dimmed, and the crowd's roar became a living ocean of sound. The stage trembled with anticipation, the air thick with electricity. Then, in the center of it all, he appeared, Michael Jackson, dressed in white, silent, almost statuesque, his presence commanding more than words ever could. Cameras flashed like lightning, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. No one could have predicted that this night, a night meant for music and magic, would turn into one of the most shocking and unforgettable moments in concert history. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another untold story. It was 1983, at a sold-out arena packed with over 20,000 screaming fans. The excitement was palpable, the kind that only Michael Jackson, the king of pop, could summon. He was at the height of his powers, every move he made, every breath he took, sent waves through the audience. Yet, hidden in that sea of faces was one man who wasn't there for the music. He was drunk, loud, and angry, a heckler who had somehow slipped through security, ready to ruin the night that thousands had waited for months to experience. As the soft intro of Human Nature began to play, the heckler's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Sing something real, Michael. You're fake, he yelled, slurring his words, his voice echoing across the front rows. Gasps rippled through the audience. Fans turned, shocked. A few shouted back, trying to silence him, but the man didn't stop. He pointed directly at Michael Jackson, his finger trembling, his voice rising again and again. The band hesitated. For the first time that night, Michael stood still, staring out into the crowd, his expression unreadable. For several seconds, there was nothing but silence. You could feel the tension, thick and suffocating. Cameras caught it, that piercing stare, that haunting stillness. Everyone wondered, what would he do? Would he walk off stage? Would security drag the man out? But Michael Jackson didn't move. Instead, he took a slow breath, closed his eyes, and stepped toward the microphone. The audience held theirs. He didn't respond with anger. He didn't shout. He didn't even acknowledge the heckler's words. What he did next left everyone, including that heckler, completely speechless. He began to sing, not just sing, he poured his soul into every note. His voice trembled with raw emotion, each lyric of Human Nature cutting deeper than before. You could feel the pain, the beauty, the defiance in every breath. It was no longer a performance, it was a moment of truth. As his voice rose, the spotlight caught the faint shimmer of tears in his eyes. The crowd, once restless, was now silent, united in awe. Even the heckler, frozen in place, lowered his hand. Slowly, he sank into his seat, as if the weight of the moment had sobered him completely. By the second chorus, the arena transformed. Tens of thousands of fans were swaying, singing softly with him, their voices merging into one. Michael's voice soared higher, trembling but powerful, as if he was turning pain into light right before their eyes. It was no longer about the song, it was about something greater, grace in the face of cruelty, love in the presence of hate. After the final note faded, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then, an explosion of sound, cheers, tears, and thunderous applause that shook the very walls of the arena. Michael Jackson stood there, motionless, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. For a brief moment, he looked toward the direction of the heckler, not with anger, but with something softer, almost like forgiveness, and then, he smiled. That smile broke the tension. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was pure, a moment of humanity that reminded everyone why Michael Jackson was not just an entertainer, but a living symbol of empathy and resilience. Later that night, members of his crew recalled that Michael never mentioned the incident backstage. He didn't scold anyone, didn't complain, didn't even bring it up. Instead, he sat quietly, sipping tea, lost in thought. One backup singer said he simply whispered, "Sometimes, people just need love. Even when they don't know it." That line, simple yet profound, became one of those behind-the-scenes quotes that perfectly captured the heart of Michael Jackson, a man who lived in the spotlight but never stopped believing in kindness, even when the world didn't deserve it. The story spread quickly among fans, retold in whispers and fan forums for years. Some claimed to have been there, describing how the entire crowd felt something shift that night. It was like he turned hate into music, one audience member recalled. He didn't fight back with words, he fought back with art. Decades later, that moment is still remembered as one of the most powerful displays of grace under pressure ever witnessed on stage. It wasn't just about confronting a heckler, it was about showing the world the power of silence, the strength of compassion, and the unbreakable spirit of a true artist. For Michael Jackson, music was never just entertainment. It was his language, his shield, his way of healing both himself and those who listened. He once said in an interview, "I don't sing to be understood. I sing to heal." That night, he did exactly that. He healed 20,000 people who came to see him, and maybe, just maybe, he healed the one man who came to hurt him. In an age where confrontation dominates headlines, this story remains a reminder of something deeper. That sometimes, the most powerful response isn't anger, it's love. And that night, in front of 20,000 witnesses, Michael Jackson proved that love, even when unspoken, can silence any storm. As the lights dimmed once more and he exited the stage, the crowd erupted again, not just in admiration, but in gratitude. They had come to see a concert, but they left having witnessed something far greater, a moment of humanity that would echo for generations. When the show ended, fans stayed behind, chanting his name long after he was gone. Some cried, others stood in stunned silence. Many didn't even realize they had witnessed history, but they had. That night became one of the rarest and most emotional stories in the legacy of the King of Pop, one that never made the headlines but lived forever in the hearts of those who were there. Even today, when people talk about Michael Jackson, they mention the moonwalk, the glove, the hits that changed music forever. But for those 20,000 people in that arena, his greatest performance wasn't about dance or perfection. It was about heart. About the courage to face cruelty with grace. About the quiet strength to respond to darkness with light. And maybe that's the real magic of Michael Jackson, the ability to turn pain into art, to transform chaos into beauty, to remind us that even in our most difficult moments, kindness still wins. But the story didn't end when the lights went out. Long after the final echo of applause faded into the night, that moment continued to live, whispered about in hotel lobbies, replayed in the minds of thousands who had witnessed it firsthand. The next morning, local newspapers reported the concert as a triumph of emotion, though none truly captured what had happened on that stage. There were no headlines about a heckler, no mention of confrontation, only words like grace, soul, and magic. Those who had been there knew something sacred had unfolded before their eyes, something that went beyond fame or spectacle. Behind closed doors, Michael Jackson remained silent about it. His team expected anger, frustration, perhaps even disappointment. But instead, he simply asked one quiet question: did he make it home safe? That was Michael, the same man who had sold out stadiums around the world, yet still found time to worry about a stranger who had tried to humiliate him. One of his bodyguards later shared that Michael had asked them not to remove the heckler roughly, even when security was ready. "He's just lost," Michael had whispered backstage before walking out to sing. "Maybe tonight, he needs to hear something beautiful." That single line revealed everything about who Michael Jackson truly was, an artist who believed that music could reach people in ways anger never could. And that night proved him right. In the following months, fans who attended that concert wrote letters, hundreds of them. They spoke about how that single performance had changed something inside them. One woman wrote, "I came to dance, but I left crying. Not because of sadness, but because I witnessed pure forgiveness. He taught me more in 3 minutes than most people do in a lifetime." Stories like these spread across fan clubs and early internet forums years later, each version adding small details, each retelling keeping that night alive. Some say the heckler found Michael years later, sober and remorseful, and wrote him a letter of apology. No one knows for sure if that letter ever reached him, but knowing Michael, he probably forgave him long before it arrived. As decades passed, the story became more than just a memory. It turned into a symbol, a quiet testament to how Michael Jackson transformed pain into poetry. He didn't just perform, he communed with his audience. Every stage became a confessional, every song a bridge between hearts that had been broken and healed through the sound of his voice. the incident also reflected something deeper about the world he lived in. By the 1980s, Michael was no longer just a singer, he was a phenomenon, constantly judged, adored, and misunderstood. The heckler that night represented what Michael faced every day, a world eager to pull him down, to question his sincerity, to test his patience. But he never allowed bitterness to take root. Instead, he answered with art, with melody, with love that felt infinite. There's a haunting beauty in that kind of strength, the kind that doesn't fight back, but rises above. That's why people didn't just cheer that night, they wept. They saw something rare, something human. They saw a man who could have responded with rage, but chose redemption instead. In later interviews, when asked about pressure, Michael often spoke softly, almost shyly, about how he handled pain. "I just danced through it," he once said. "I put it in the music, and then I let it go." That philosophy was born in moments like that concert, when the world was watching, when the easy choice was anger, but the greater choice was love. Years later, when footage from that night resurfaced in fan archives, viewers who hadn't even been alive during the 80s felt the weight of it. The grainy black and white clips, the trembling camera, the stillness in Michael's eyes before he sang, everything about it felt cinematic, almost divine. Comment sections filled with messages like, "He didn't need to speak. He just sang, and the whole world understood." Others wrote, "No one else could have done that. Only Michael." And they were right. Even in silence, Michael Jackson had power, the kind that came not from ego, but from empathy. It's the same power that made his humanitarian work resonate, the same heart that drove him to visit hospitals, orphanages, and shelters after shows, long after his energy was gone. What the world saw on stage that night was just a glimpse of the man he truly was off stage, gentle, forgiving, endlessly kind. That night also changed the way many artists viewed confrontation. In a culture that thrives on outrage, Michael's quiet composure became a lesson in humility. Musicians who later learned of the story said they carried it with them, remembering that no crowd, no insult, no moment of disrespect could overpower authenticity. As one of his tour crew later reflected, Michael didn't just perform songs. He taught lessons. He reminded us that love isn't weakness, it's strength. And so, the story became legend. Fans called it the Night of Silence. A moment when a man stood alone before thousands, faced cruelty head-on, and turned it into a masterpiece of grace. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't scripted. It was pure human truth. There's a haunting image from that night, a single photograph that still circulates among fans. Michael stands before the microphone, head tilted slightly, eyes soft but resolute. In the foreground, the heckler's arm is extended, pointing accusingly. And yet, Michael's face is calm, almost sorrowful, like a teacher watching a lost student. That picture says everything words cannot. It's not just a photo, it's a portrait of patience, of empathy, of quiet power. In the end, that's what Michael Jackson represented. Beyond the fame, beyond the controversy, beyond the impossible expectations, he was, at his core, a man who believed in the transformative power of love. A man who faced hate not with fury, but with melody. And that's why his music continues to heal, to inspire, to reach hearts across generations. When you listen to him sing, "Heal the World" or "Man in the Mirror," it's impossible not to think of that night, when he showed us what those lyrics truly meant. When he embodied them. When he turned a drunk heckler's cruelty into one of the most profound acts of forgiveness ever witnessed on stage. And maybe, just maybe, that's why his legacy endures. Because long after the last note fades, what remains is not just sound, it's spirit. The spirit of a man who reminded us that kindness is the ultimate rebellion. As the years go by, new generations discover Michael Jackson, drawn in by his artistry, his mystery, his brilliance. But those who look deeper, who listen beyond the music, find something more powerful, the soul of a man who turned every stage into a sanctuary of love. And somewhere, in the echo of that unforgettable night, you can still hear it, that moment when the crowd went silent, when one voice of hate was drowned out by 20,000 hearts united by song. The moment when the king didn't just perform, he forgave. That is the untold story, the story of a man who faced cruelty with compassion, who turned the heckler into a witness of grace, and who, even in the harshest light, never stopped believing in love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, because stories like this remind the world who Michael Jackson truly was. This is not just about music. It's about humanity. And it's about one unforgettable night, when the king of pop showed us all what it means to be human.